Okay, so good morning. My name is Louis Latour. I'm working as a DevOps for FHIR, and we stay in the secure area with Bashir Sadjad, and he will explain us how we can secure the FHIR server using a FHIR Info Gateway.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for coming. Yeah, I'm Bashir. I'm a software engineer at Google. I skipped some of these initial slides to have enough time to cover the main part. Open Health Stack, hopefully you have heard about Open Health Stack by now. It's a set of components that we develop to make it easy to deploy digital healthcare systems with a focus on low middle income countries. I mean, in general, low resource environments. Everything is open source. One of the first component or the most adopted component actually is Android FHIR SDK, which is used when people want to do FHIR native kind of apps on Android. There was a talk Jing did for the Kotlin multi-platform, which is related to this, and also Divya had a talk about the workflow library of this during this DevDays. FHIR data pipes, I briefly mentioned this in my talk on Tuesday for the text to SQL on FHIR. There is also a more detailed, longer tutorial, which I did 2 years ago here for DevDays. You can go watch that or see the slides. But this talk is about the FHIR Information Gateway, which is the third component here. And I'll cover that in more details. So one quick note about the FHIR security and privacy. So if you go to the security page on FHIR, the first kind of sentence is that FHIR is not a security protocol. So there is a lot of details that it says that it should be, you should consider this, you should do that, you should do it. But FHIR itself is, silent about how you do these kind of things. Basically, there are related standards like SMART-on-FHIR, and actually the previous speaker was talking about it, that are recommended to be used when you want to do certain things, but it's not part of the core FHIR. So it's basically left to you to decide how to do these kind of things. So the way that the FHIR Information Gateway was actually born, this is actually the third component, the last component of Open Health Stack that we created. It came actually from a very natural need. So we had some partners who were using Android FHIR SDK to develop apps. And these are offline capable apps. And then, they wanted to let's say sync their data with a FHIR server. And obviously we needed some sort of access control layer in between. So that's how that was the context in which we created the FHIR Info Gateway. But it doesn't have to be, it's just one use case. That app could be like a patient-facing, a SMART-on-FHIR based app. It could be like a web app that a program admin is using for, managing, health workers in a region. It could even be like a backend component that needs to fetch data from FHIR server. So all of these need some sort of access control. For example, the health worker, maybe we just want to limit their access only to their patients. Or for the patient case, they should only have access to themselves or maybe their dependents, for example. So to solve this problem, we have created the FHIR Gateway. So FHIR Gateway, you can think of it as a facade, actually as a FHIR facade. That's actually how it's implemented. So it is actually a FHIR, like a simple server that sits around your FHIR server. So from outside point of view, everybody sees the FHIR Gateway. Nobody sees the internal FHIR store. And then it just does a reverse proxy, basically. So that's basically what it does. And it applies the access control logic. So it grants access or deny access. So from the design doc, again, these links and everything is on GitHub and available. So some of the principles from the early design doc actually, one was that we wanted flexible access control. So it should be easy for people to implement their access control logic. That's why we have a plugin architecture for the core access checker. We don't want to make any assumption about the app. So everything is about the token. So anybody who has the token, they should be able to do anything within the limits of the token. We don't make any assumptions about that. It could be a bad app actually. And then it should be generalizable in the sense that it should not, as much as possible, it should not be dependent on a specific FHIR implementation. So, and that's actually important because, some of our partners, they have an implementation in one country which uses a happy server, like a local happy server. In another country, they have an implementation which uses like GCP FHIR store, for example. And then they can implement their access control logic once and then deploy it anywhere in front of their FHIR server. So that's important to be in that sense. So very quickly about the concepts, just to make sure that we are talking about the same thing, and then see where the gateway actually sits. So in the context of access control, we have authentication, which is basically the question of who is the user, what's the identity of the user who is accessing the data. We have and it can be done, even through like general, like federated services, like Google or Facebook or GitHub or whatever. Then there is the question of authorization, which is, okay, now I know who the user is. What are they authorized to access? So that's the question of, so this is context specific. And then it's access control. So now that I know the user, I know what are their limits of their access, I want to apply that access control logic when they are accessing FHIR resources. And everything that we do is in the context of OAuth, and even like, basically, all the tokens are JWTs, basically, the JSON Web Tokens. Okay, now we can come to the architecture picture. So the first two components, in Open Health Stack, we want to create components where first they are common, second, there's no equivalent open source for them. So for the identity provider, like I said, you can even use federated services, anything that implements like OpenID Connect. And even for authorization, there is like great implementation like Keycloak, for example. So we don't want to solve that problem. It's a hard problem, and there's a good solution for it, right? So then the identity provider authorization could be same server, could be separate servers. That's basically, we don't care. What we care is that the user goes to, we in the the well-known information that we have in the gateway, we advertise who is the authorization server that we work with. But then it's basically the app's responsibility to go to that authorization server and then get an access token. All that we care about is that whenever the user comes to our gateway and wants to access a FHIR resource, they attach an access token to that request, and then we verify that access token. So we don't care how they have got this token. And that's why that, even in the backend use case, which I briefly mentioned and I haven't included here, that still can work. As long as they have an access token, they bring it to us, we can check, and then we can check whether, the FHIR request actually complies with that. So basically, that's basically where the FHIR gateway comes into the picture. Now we want to apply an access control logic. And this access control logic could be different things. Okay? And this is the plugin. This is the access checker plugin. So it could be, even fetching, ACLs from a separate server or database. It may read FHIR server, like, location information or care plan or organization or things like that. And based on that, make a decision whether to grant access or not. So this is a custom implementation, which comes as a access checker plugin. And obviously we have the FHIR store, which is the source of truth. So it's the resource server, basically. So this is the interface of the access checker. I just skipped this one. The slides are available. So what does come out of the box with the Info Gateway? So all of the handling of the JWT and verification of it and extraction of claims and things like that, that's what the implementers can get for free. The other one is that there are libraries to deal with common access patterns. So for example, it's a very common pattern that somebody has access to a patient, and then based on that, whatever that information for that patient exists, we grant access. So then we have like a library to basically inspect the request or the resources that are returned and decide whether this is within the patient compartment, that patient that they have access to. Or we have like a library to handle a SMART-on-FHIR scopes, for example, which is again, a common use case. And we have also some access checker plugins that come with the library, with what we release. One of them is a patient access checker, which is basically is out of the box, can work for a standalone user SMART-on-FHIR patient app. And another one is the list access checker. That's also a common pattern, which is where the user has access to a list of patients. So that also comes out of the box. Okay, now what is new? I actually did a version of this talk last year, and I went to in DevDays, and I went to more details about the way the different access checkers and how our partners do this. So I don't do that here. I focus more on the newer features. So the main new feature is that now that everything goes through the Info Gateway, it's the natural place to implement audit logs. So every access is happening through this gateway. So then let's actually offer that to the implementers for free as well, because we can see everything, right? So, and that's what we do. We create, so we monitor all the access, and then depending on the configuration, we create audit events resources. And that can, store, I guess by default, we store them in the FHIR store, but it can go in other places as well. Okay, so how do we do this? How do we do the audit events? So first, when we started to do this, the concept was clear that, we should just create audit events for access. But if you look at the audit event resource, there are many things that you need to make a decision. What value set do I use for here? What entity should I log? What agents should I log? And things like that. Thankfully, we found this bulb implementation guide, the IHE's basic audit log patterns, and that answers a lot of these questions. So basically, we follow that. So our implementation basically implements that IHE. So instead of making those decisions ourselves, we just look at the IHE and then we follow those decisions. Like I said, it is configurable. The only piece that the access checker can provide, and I think it's useful to be provided by the access checker, is who the user is. And that's, if you think about it, that's something that we cannot decide at the core level. This is the access checker, because the access checker plugin at the end of the day knows exactly who the user is, because it has to map some claims to some user identity. If they don't provide that, there is a default implementation where we use the JOT claims to create like a minimal user who, basically. And that's again, that table, is an edited version, comes from the bulb IHE. And then again, another example of things that comes for free, and it follows the bulb IHE. So there is a section in the bulb IHE which is its focus is on patient privacy. So whenever access to something related to a patient happens, it's recommended that an entity is added to the audit event which references that patient. And if you think about it, it's very natural, because if you want to answer this question, that who accessed data about this patient, then you can just search all of those references. So it's actually like kind of a recommended thing. And it's actually fairly simple for us to implement. Like I said in previous slide, we have libraries to basically decide the patient compartment boundaries of requests and the resources that are written. So that's why we can implement that easily, and that's offered for free. So I have to give acknowledgement to Martin Ndegwa, who is like a software engineer at ONA. He's actually the main person who is doing the implementation for this. It's not, the code is not complete yet, and not everything is merged. Part of it is on me that, I haven't managed to finish my reviews before the dev days, which was the plan. But, everything will be merged soon. And he has been great. We are actually proud of our partners. That's the model that we have in Open Health Stack. So we want the community to actually contribute to the code. And like I said, in the dev days last year, I covered the use case, the particular use case that ONA has, and the way that they use the Info Gateway in their implementation. these are some of the future directions that we want to do. I guess maybe one of the important and big ones is that how to handle consent also in FHIR Info Gateway. This is my contact information, and please join the OHS community. Everything is, we do, even like our development process is open, so you can join our dev calls and mailing lists and contribute. And now it's time for QA and feedback.
Yeah. Thank you, Bashir. Any question from the audience?
Okay.
Yeah, it's on. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for the presentation. It's very interesting. So that workflow supported the SMART-on-FHIR, right?
One example is that it can support the SMART-on-FHIR. So if you use this access checker,
right?
So yeah.
Yeah, because my question is, if, for example, when in the SMART-FHIR workflow, the app is going to go to the FHIR server to get the well-known, right?
To get the
well-known.
Right,
yeah,
right.
Well-known.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, right.
So well-known will come back with issuer and those kind of stuff, right? So my question is, what is the issuer? Are you going to translate from underneath the FHIR server issuer or the proxy issuer?
The proxy issuer. So basically, the FHIR store maybe doesn't even have like a well-known.
Yeah.
So everything comes, so basically so if you go back to that picture, we are like, the gateway is the interface to the outside world.
Okay. So that's good. Yeah. Second question is, do you have any roadmap for like a support, for example, the pub and sub, like a FHIR subscription?
So FHIR subscription, let me think about this. Does it fit the backend model? That's actually a good question, and I'm not sure. So basically, the subscription hook will be registered on,
Probably it's going to be another translation layer.
Yeah,
as well.
yeah, that's actually a good point. No, currently I don't think that it's actually supported, because the way that it has to be done is that it should the registration should happen on the gateway, and then basically we should do something similar on the FHIR store and then relay that, right? And we don't have that, right? And that's a good comment. Yeah.
Yeah, because we can talk about more like offline, because we really have two use cases right now. We are developing our pan-Canadian specification, so that actually have some notion of this, but we call it SAFA, like a SMART-on-FHIR accelerator. It's very similar to idea of this proxy.
I see.
But we do want to support and pub and sub because there's a true use case like for example, the e-referral, like the information is all very likely offline.
Right.
That can be many months that come back with confirmation, right?
Right.
So that's why we want to use that. My last question is for the sorry, the JWT token so that everything is always like for the app is only aware of the proxy, right? So that's no separate IDP. That's all proxy.
Yeah. So the IDP could be a separate thing. It could be even like a federated. It could be Google, for example.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
But then the thing is that the gateway should be aware of it. So the gateway validates the JWT with that public key of that.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah.
Hey, thank you so much, Bashir, for the presentation. I guess my question was about the patient access, kind of out of the box when you mentioned with auditing, and you said importantly we need to audit the user, and I just wondered, like, what part of the claim or what part of the token, what claimant token does it use to identify the user? Is it configurable? Does that end up in the audit logs?
So you mean specifically for the SMART-on-FHIR flow that is patient? Yeah. So in that case, it is. Let's just go here. So in that case, in the JWT that comes in, it has like a FHIR user, I think is the claim. So it has a claim that has the ID of the patient, right? So right now, out of the box. So again, this is a good comment. So we are updating these as well to have this this one, the get user who, and this would be a reference to the patient, and that's easy to extract. But if you don't implement that out of the box, it doesn't create the patient as the user. It doesn't create like a reference to the patient as the user. But we should update that, default, out of the box access checker to do that, right? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for presentation. In my country, we have many different registers, and on your picture, I seen only one FHIR store. But can you use this proxy in the front of several stores and use as a router?
Yeah. So again, this is also a very interesting use case, and we have we have discussed that before. Currently, no. So the answer is currently no. It sits in front of one FHIR server, but it's not. It's something that is doable. We haven't just had a use case for it, but currently it doesn't support. But I understand. This is a useful use case. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Bashir, for your presentation. So, maybe my question is about the previous use case, not the new ones. Like access control for a read request is fairly easy, but search and search-like requests are very complex. Like imagine somebody wants to read all the observation for a patient, and some of them are sensitive, like substance abuse, and you want to mask those. Or even incoming references to a patient could go outside of the patient compartment. Do you detect those? Do you avoid those? And then what will imagine, 10,000 resources, and suddenly in page, 99, you find out, there are some resources that are not allowed to be accessed. What's the behavior of gateway in those cases?
Right. Just to make sure that I understand the second part. So let's say a user is accessing a patient information. So what is the reference that you mean it's to someone else?
You could have, there is this search request, incoming references to a resource. Like you could say that give me all resources that have a reference to patient 123, and then some of those resources might be outside of the patient compartment.
Yeah. Okay, good. Both questions, very good. So the first question about, when, let's say I'm accessing a patient's information and there is sensitive information that's coming back. So right now, the boundary of access is resource. So either you have access to this resource or you don't have it. I think it's mostly like resource type. So if you have access to observations of a patient, then you have access to all the observations. But that said, so in the roadmap, one of the things that I didn't went into detail is that we want to security labels. So one of the things that we want to support is that at least one way of implementing that is to attach security labels. Let's say the HIV status of a patient, it might be a higher security, and you don't want to show to this role, right? We want to have some sort of support for that use case, which is what you mentioned. But currently, if the access checkers want to implement that, they still can do it because there is a post process. So when the resources come back, so when the response comes back, they can do whatever they want at the gateway level and then send it back. Now, for the second question, which is the references basically in the search, by default we have disabled that, and that's a very good point. Because of those reasons, because it's hard to argue about whether the boundaries are actually. So by default it is disabled. If someone enables, then they have to be enabled. Yeah, thanks.
Yes, so we have 2-3 minutes late, so I think now it's a break, so you can anyway.
Yeah. Actually, I will be here if you have questions. Yeah, I will. Yeah.
Yeah, or move. And again, don't forget to submit a feedback. It's always useful for the speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.